Welcome back to the Go to Go podcast, man. Episode 122. AFC NFC championship games just uh happening this weekend, man. NCAA championship game concluded last night between Ohio State and Notre Dame. And then this episode we're going to talk about our awards for the NFL 2024 regular season, man. Who we got on that list. Let's start with the NFL pick'ems real quick. Um, Eagles, Commanders in the NFC, Chiefs, Bills, Eagles hosting, Chiefs hosting as well. Home field advantage for both those teams right now in the playoffs. The Eagles finished off the 2 seed. Didn't matter. You got what you wanted. Eagles home field advantage at the link. Um, I'm gonna let you go, man. Your Eagles versus the Commanders.
Um, Obviously, going into this, I'm gonna pick the Eagles, but yeah, it's gonna be a good game. I mean, the Commanders, they've been road dogs throughout the entire postseason. I believe they're the only team to win a playoff game on the road this postseason, and they've won two. So, I mean, going into their third one, it's gonna be a tough battle. But I mean, divisional matchup, divisional rivalry. So there's going to be a bunch of Commanders fans. It's not a far drive from DC to Philly. They're going to show out more than probably all their other games. Although their Tampa game, there was a bunch of Commander fans, but in the league, it'll be cold. I'm not too sure about the weather updates yet. I mean, I knew about last week around this time that it was going to be like a lot. They said it was going to be pretty snowy. Haven't heard anything like weather wise for the game coming up this week, but I mean, it's going to be January in Philly, so cold. Like we all know what's going on there. But matchup wise, we've seen this matchup twice already this season, which is also another like interesting fact. The Eagles have played every single team like in the postseason like once earlier this season, so a lot of familiarity there. And I think no more than with the Commanders. But I mean, starting off, like, well, where else do you go talking about this game other than Jaden Daniels and what he was able to pull off and what they were able to do that game? And the biggest thing for me, and you can chime in and tell me what you think about it as well, is I just think in that game, and this goes back to the last week of the season, week 17, we saw what Detroit did against Minnesota and that offense and Dan Campbell, that defense, they came out and said like, "Hey, we know we have a bunch of injuries on our defense. We know we're undermanned, so we're gonna just play like a all in, like a super risky, like high risk, high reward. We're gonna blitz a bunch of people. We're gonna play super aggressive, and just hope that you make the mistakes." Well, Sam Darnold made those mistakes, but I think Jaden Daniels and this offensive game plan and the scheme, and you got to give credit to Cliff Kingsbury and what that offense had going on because they were ready for what Detroit had, you know, schemed up for them. And Detroit seemed to play the same defense. They were super aggressive, super physical. They were blitzing a lot, moving guys around. But Jaden Daniels against the blitz and that offense and what they had going on, they just seemed to be ready. Like, I mean, and to me, the perfect example, like the epitome of like the reason they won that game is like if you just look at that Terry McLaurin touchdown, like a
Hmm.
bubble screen for 60 yards. Like in no world should you have two defensive backs lined up over three receivers. Like that's the easiest check like in the world. Like anybody can make that. That's like something you see on Madden. Like, oh, I'm audible to a screen right here. Like I got the numbers. Like anybody could have figured that out. So they brought pressure, and Jaden Daniels was just super, super efficient, super calm in the pocket. A lot of quick passes, a lot of passes stretching that Lions defense out to the perimeter because, when you're in those condensed formations, especially when you look at that McVay offense and what Kevin O'Connell, what they like to do, they like to have those condensed formations. They like to have the receivers closer to the line of scrimmage. They like the stacks. Well, if you have more receivers and people closer to the line of scrimmage, you kind of don't know where the blitz is coming from. Whereas you kind of saw what the Commanders did. They spreaded the offense out. They kind of made you tell them where the blitz was coming from. Whereas when you have three receivers to one side, out wide in a bunch formation, and you only have two defensive backs over there, it's like, okay, now we know the other guy is coming from this side. Like, so I think they like the formations they used in their game plan with the quick passes got it out of Jaden Daniels' hands really quick, and he made a lot of quick decisions. Like I was just super impressed from the Commanders on their side. Like I don't know what you saw, but to me that's what I thought is, in that game against the Lions, I just thought their offensive game plan was really solid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Going a little bit back when you were talking regarding the weather. I think it's less of a factor considering the Commanders do play in DC compared to the Rams last week, indoor team. Um, so both these NFC East teams, they're pretty adjusted to the weather. Maybe
Hmm.
in Philly it gets a little bit more snowy, but DC still pretty cold. Probably get some snow around the year as well. But Jane Daniels, he was spot on, man. Made all the right reads. You mentioned Cliff Kingsbury. I think this is what the Cardinals envisioned when they had Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury in the same system. What he's doing right now with Jane McDaniels, it looks like a whole new Cliff Kingsbury, the one that got fired from Arizona on that guaranteed big money contract. Took his little vacation. He's coming back. He's dicing up as an OC, and the weapons around him. Terry McLaurin just faster than everybody on that defense, on that bubble screen that went to the crib. I think they did a good job establishing a run. Everybody got involved in
Hmm.
that offense. Um, I think there's just like you got Terry McLaurin, obviously great receiver. But they just share the love all around the field. It doesn't matter who it is. Jaden Daniels finds the guy, whether it's Ertz, whether it's Brown. Eckler out the backfield did a pretty good job in that run game, was able to get going, and the defense was just able to make a couple plays that they needed, force some turnovers against Golf, force him to have, maybe the second worst game of his career. Ben Johnson, maybe a little head scratcher play call towards the end of the game. But that was some of the plays that were working for him. Those little trick plays got a little too fancy with it in the end, fourth quarter. The J-Mo pick. I mean, you live and die with it if you're Ben Johnson. Those are the plays that really big plays that the Lions had going all game were those trick plays, those misdirections, those end around special plays. So you just got to give credit to the Commanders and Jaden Daniels. Your pick for Rookie of the Year preseason, so during the awards wouldn't shock me if you had him as your pick. But regardless, man, I mean, hats off to him. I forget what coach it was or OC said Jaden Daniels is a rookie on a birth certificate, but tape, he's
Yeah,
definitely
Big
not.
Fangio said that. Yeah.
Yeah, the Eagles
Hmm.
defensive coordinator. Well, I mean, most of the time the guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but I think he's right in this sense with Jay and
um,
Daniels. So
yeah, and then I think you mentioned it. Like a lot of those guys on the Commanders stepping up, like outside of Terry McLaurin, there's like no really like superstar names out there. But I think another really big thing, and you kind of touched on it with Ben Johnson and the questionable play call with JMO or whatever. But like as much as we love Dan Campbell and you got to give him praise and Ben Johnson, like he just took the head coaching job for the Bears. We can talk about, how brilliant he is, an offensive mind, and Dan Campbell, like he's a rah-rah guy. And you've kind of been on this, behind the scenes. You've kind of been like, yo, I don't do is he really the guy? But I mean, like in this big moment, like how else can you put it besides like he got out coached and they got out schemed. Like Dan
hmm
Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury had a better game plan coming into this game. Whereas, it's like in critical moments, like a bunch of flags on that fourth down at the end of the game, the Commanders are driving. Like you can't have 12 men on the field. Like that's just something that can't
Yep.
happen there. Like crucial penalties, holdings, like and then turnovers. Like Jared Goff, the first one where he threw the pick six, he gets banged up after that. Is he the same? Is he not?
Pancaked.
Well, I mean, even if he isn't the same, like he still threw that pick six before. So like bunch of turnovers. You mentioned Jamison Williams, head scratching play, like in a pivotal drive. Do you want to put the ball in his hands to make a decision down the field?
hmm
Like just a lot of questionable calls down the stretch. Not a lot of discipline. Just so, and then you look on the other side with the Commanders, no turnovers. They didn't have many of the costly penalties. And down the stretch, when it mattered the most, they played clean football. And I think as to when we get into discussing some of these other games, I think that's going to be like the main key and the main reason why we look at these teams and why they won. I think you know the main factor is, especially in playoff football, you know how important it is. Like every single drive counts, every possession counts. So like penalties and turnovers, you look at the teams that were able to protect the ball and that didn't have the costly penalties down the stretch, like they ended up winning the game. And I'm not gonna get too far ahead of myself. We'll talk about the Chiefs and Texans, but that's a different story. But you look at the Eagles and the Rams game, and then you look at the Ravens and Bills, like turnovers and penalties cost those teams a lot of the games. So I think it was really important, and it was kind of like foreshadowing in this Lions and Commanders games. Whereas the team that was better coached, the team that protected the football and didn't make the mental mistakes or the costly mistakes and pivotal points of the games, they came out on top. So I mean, touching on the Eagle side of it, like I'm gonna start with the bad first, just because on this podcast I've always been the Eagles pessimist, even though they've been one of the best teams in the league since we started this podcast. But defensively, I thought they were pretty solid. They made some plays when they wanted to. Quinyon Mitchell, he got banged up early. I think it was like on the first or second drive. He got hurt
Hmm.
tackling Matthew Stafford, his shoulder. He didn't come back in the game, so that really hurt. And then obviously, I think you could really tell they missing the Kobe Dean out there, because Kyron Williams was able to get a little bit going there on the ground earlier on, and the Kobe Dean has been such a impactful player, especially in the run. So I think injuries did play somewhat of a factor earlier on, and we were missing some key players. But I think defense played good enough. Down the stretch, there was you got a little concern, like it just everything looked a little too easy. But when it mattered the most, the players came up. They made a bunch of big plays. I think, looking on the positive side of the defense, Darius Slay, he was around the ball a bunch. He made a bunch of plays, had a couple of nice PBUs. Cooper DeJean had a couple of nice plays as well. I think Slay and DeJean both had drop picks. I think one on the beginning of the drive, and then at the end, I think Cooper DeJean kind of just
Yeah.
missed one in the snow. Like, it's a tough catch. I get it. Like, if you're not a receiver, like it's a hard catch. I think if it wasn't slowing, it'd be a bit easier. But he had a chance to take the ball away there. I thought the secondary played good enough considering what happened. Chauncey, he made a big stop in the run game. So I mean, and then you look at the reason we won this game. Like it's Jalen Carter. His impact, what he was able to do, and then Nolan Smith off the edge. He's pretty much like gone into another mode here in the postseason. He stepped up his game a bunch, and Josh Sweat, he's kind of had a disappointing stretch down here. The last couple games, and then going into the postseason, he's been a little quiet. But I think Nolan Smith has really stepped up. Him and Jalen Carter, like I think I saw a stat or something like through the first two games they accounted for like 3.5 sacks, two forced fumbles, and then like 10 or 12 pressures or something crazy like that. Like in the span of two games, those guys have just been, you know, the main reason why they're in a lot of these games, because they're able to dominate the line of scrimmage. And then obviously, Zach Bond is he just continues to be everywhere. Like another fumble recovery, he's all over the field. He's one of the best, if not the best interior linebacker this season. I mean, first team All Pro. It doesn't get any better than that in terms of accolades and how you're playing. So defensively, I thought it was good enough, but offensively, kind of I don't want to say it was bad, but like it just didn't seem like it was clicking. And then I mean, I'll let you chime in here and what you think about the offense, but obviously the run game with Saquon Barkley in that offensive line, like you're going to be able to run the ball. Like I mean, his numbers against the Rams are like insane. He has like 460 plus yard rushing touchdowns against the Rams, like just this season, over 200 yards in two games. Like it's just insane. I think he has like over 500 total yards against the Rams this season. Like in two games, that's absurd. Like Saquon Barkley is just like a home run waiting to happen. I don't like at this point, like I don't know what you can say like more about Saquon Barkley. He's just one of, if not arguably, the best player in the league in terms of just pure football player, and the way they scheme up around him is amazing. But I think coming into this game, what everyone's gonna say, and like the big question mark, I know you definitely gonna have something to say. Is the Eagles' passing game and Jalen Hurts, it just didn't seem like it was on the same page, and I think it's on both sides because. Yes, I think a lot of the sides Jalen Hurts took in that game were on him. It always seemed like he was holding on to the ball. His first read wasn't there. He was like looking around a bit. He just didn't seem, comfortable in the pocket. And then you also got to look down the stretch. Like AJ Brown dropped the ball at the 1 yard line, or it looked like it could have been at the 1 yard line or a touchdown. I mean, Hurts put it up there, a nice back shoulder. He just couldn't hold on to it, I believe. Devontae Smith dropped a touchdown as well. Someone else dropped a pass in the end zone. So just miscues on both ends. Like if he completes those other passes, his numbers look a lot good. But like I mentioned earlier, like Jalen Hurts, yeah, he did take a lot of sacks, but he was able to protect the ball. He didn't turn it over, and he played good enough. And on those big runs, like especially that first one, that's a play that Jalen Hurts checked into at the line. Like that wasn't the play call. Like Jalen Hurts read the defense, saw the pre-snap read, and checked into that run. So like, yeah, that doesn't go on Jalen Hurts stat sheet as like a Jalen Hurts passing touchdown, but you have to give him credit, especially from the past couple of seasons. Whereas Jason Kelsey, when he was here, he was the one making all the pre-snap reads. We talked about it like he was the best center. He was the one making all the shifts, all of that. So it's really nice to see Jalen Hurts growing as a quarterback in the mental part, to whereas he can read the defense pre-snap, find up that matchup he likes, get to a play he knows that'll work, and then boom, you got a long touchdown from Saquon. Like, yeah, that's not on Jalen Hurts' stat sheet, but he's the reason that play happened. So you got to give them credit there. I think the offense played good enough, and they know the defense is playing like that. This defense is going to create turnovers. They know they just have to play good enough football. Now, will that be enough down the stretch? We can get into that, but I think against the Rams in that game, obviously, yes, with the weapons that they have, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, you want to see a lot more from this offense. I don't know if we'll see it this year, like just because I think it kind of is what it is at this point, but with this run game and the way they're able to block up and the way they're able to create turnovers on defense, like I think it's a recipe for success in playoff football. Like that's just how you win games, especially this time of year.
Yeah. Um, Let me keep the Eagles terms short. Um, Jared Verse, he had a day, whether you thought it was Jalen Hurts holding on to the ball too long. The offensive line, I mean, they made some mistakes. I mean, this offensive line, you've seen them at their best holding clean pockets for very long and giving Jalen Hurts all day to throw. Did weather play a factor? Jalen Hurts' knee obviously played a factor into that, perked up at the end of the game. All the memes around about that, but I mean, for the Commanders, game plan has to be clear. Obviously, coming into this matchup, Dan Quinn, it's just you got to limit Saquon Barkley at this point. You saw what he's done, putting teams on his back with the Giants, solid in the playoffs with the Eagles now. You limit him,
Solid. I
yes,
think solid is an understatement.
yeah, I mean, understatement, whatever, but I really think you live or die if Jalen Hurts outduels Jaden McDaniels at this stage, and you let your D coordinators battle it out between Vic, uh, Dan Quinn, and then obviously the play calling between Kellen Moore and Cliff Kingsbury on the other side. I think it's, the two best quarterbacks in the NFC East, obviously. Jaden Daniels making an argument for one of the top NFC quarterbacks in his rookie year if he's not already up there. I mean, you look at the names, he's definitely up in the conversation with the way some of these guys have performed all season. And then going into the playoffs, guys like Golf, guys like Matt Stafford, he didn't play horrible game, snow game, obviously, take that into account. But I mean, these are the NFC top quarterbacks when you look at it. Jordan Love, he's banged up all year. So Jalen Daniels is in that conversation, and Jalen Hurts in the past, in the Eagles' previous Super Bowl run, was in that conversation. So I think this is going to be a good game, man. I'm gonna rock with the Commanders, and the Nick Sirianni hate train continues. And maybe this is good news for you. Every week I pick against the Eagles won. So
Yeah, and then Jim, like throughout the playoffs, I don't think Jalen Hurts has had a playoff game over, I want to say like 250 passing yards. He just had that one super big game in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs where, he put the team on his back. But I'm like in the playoffs, this is kind of like how the Eagles have been. It's just been a lot of dominant football. Like in terms of when Jalen Hurts has been there, he's never really had to do, too much, and they haven't asked that of him. Only thing I will say about this Eagles and Commanders matchup is you mentioned like you got to go out and stop Saquon. Like that's got to be your main key. Well, I mean, I think Green Bay tried to do that, and I think they bottled him up, okay, but he still ended with like 118, 112 rushing yards or something like that. And he slid early on a home run ball that that could have added another 40 yards and touchdowns on his resume for that Green Bay game. And then going into this Rams game, first matchup of the season, the man had 300 total scrimmage yards against you. He rushed for 255. You don't think they was trying to go in there like, yo, we got to stop Saquon? Like, I
I
promise you, that was the main thing they went over. It's just
I
hard.
think
And
the
then you look at
blizzard
this.
played a real factor too. The
Well,
Eagles
it
did a
did,
great
but that
job.
first run, the first run, it wasn't snowing.
Yeah.
Like the first
The
long run he had,
yeah.
there was no snow on the field. Like it was cold, yeah, but I mean that's football.
No, I
And then you
agree.
look at this Commanders team, like the previous success Saquon has had against them. He's had big games in the first two games he played against the Commanders. He's had a couple long runs. He had one long pass against the in the first game as well. The second game, he opened it up when Jalen Hurts was there. He had that long touchdown run. So he's been able to run all over the Commanders. And we just saw last week, even though they lost, Jahmyr Gibbs was averaging like 10 yards a carry. Like it seemed like they went away from the run a little too much. And honestly, like I know David Montgomery's back, like, and he's a really good back, but I just felt like there were some times where like Jahmyr Gibbs clearly, I mean, this
Hmm.
explosiveness and the way he looks is the better back than David Montgomery. And you just kind of seemed like every time they handed him the ball against this Commanders team, it was going for like at least 7 yards, 8 yards. He busts off a long run here or there. So the Commanders really weren't able to stop the run against Jahmyr Gibbs. Also, it just kind of got away from him, and they had to pass the ball to keep up in terms of scoring, but this Commanders defense, and I mentioned it last week, they're not that good against the run. And I think it's going to be another big Saquon Barkley game. Like he's proved against this Commanders team, he's able to have a lot of big plays, a lot of explosive plays. And we just saw last week this Commanders team, even though they won defensively, you put an explosive back against them, he's going to have success with a good offensive line because the Detroit Lions are a good run blocking line, one of the top lines in the league. And Jahmyr Gibbs had a lot of success, man. It felt like he was averaging, you know, at least a first down and then some every time he touched the ball. Jahmyr Gibbs had a lot of success. So if they were able to maybe stick with the run a little bit more, who knows? I mean, that's like hindsight's 2020. But regardless, I definitely think like I know people want to see like, oh, like Jalen Hurts, you got to go out there, you got to throw for 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, this and that. Like as long as he's protecting the ball, and I think the matchups, the way it's played out, like I just don't see a way where Saquon Barkley doesn't have over 100 rushing yards, especially in a game where we just saw this Washington run defense give up a bunch of rushing yards to a good explosive back. I think it could be something similar. I think it's going to come down to this defense. Can they just get a couple stops on Jaden Daniels? And I think the main thing against this Commanders offense is you got to win on first down. Like they're just so good at getting a little couple plays here and there, and they're gonna go for it on fourth down. And every single fourth down they went for it against the Lions, it just felt like it was 4th and 1, 4th and 2. They need just a couple yards here or there. 4th and 4, it's like Jaden Daniels is just gonna get it. He's either gonna run for it or he's gonna hit Zach Ertz over the middle, or Terry McLaurin's gonna be on a drag route. Like they just always had answers. So I think you got to win first down, keep them in obvious pass situations. As much as that, like it's Jaden Daniels, he's such a good quarterback, but I just don't think you can have him get into those short yardage situations where his legs become such a factor. And you don't know if it's going to be a run. You mentioned Brian Robinson had a good game, and then they have reliable weapons on the outside. And I say this like he didn't run for a first down on a 4th and 11 earlier this season against the Eagles, but I'd rather live with that than it'd be 4th and 2, and it kind of just feels like at that point, like it just give them the first down. Like they're so efficient on those short yardage plays, and they have so many threats, especially with Jaden Daniels in his legs. So I think that's what it's going to come down to because I think the Eagles are going to be able to move the ball on offense. Saquon's going to have a big game. It's just going to be, can they limit Jaden Daniels? Can they create turnovers? In the first game, they got to him a couple times. I believe he fumbled it, and Zach Bond had an interception. So we mentioned it, man. Whoever plays the cleanest game, whoever has the less penalties and wins the turnover battle in these playoff games is two good teams. So it's usually how it's going to end. Those possessions really matter. They really count. So I think it's going to come down to that. I think it's going to be a close game, but I mean, yeah, man, I'm not picking the Commanders. Give me the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm going Commanders here. Next game up, man, Chiefs. Um, excuse me, Bills at the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Buffalo travels to Kansas City, and once again, a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes classic rematch here, and the Bills able to sneak away with the win. I mean, it's kind of, common sense at this point, but at the end of the day, it's football. You mentioned earlier, the teams that have taken care of the football, limit the turnovers, they win the games, hence the Bills, the Commanders, the Eagles, and whatnot. All won their respective football games, taking care of the football last week. Um, on the other hand, you got, Patrick Mahomes and company. They're able to get it done no matter what it is. And for the Bills, I mean, I, I hate to say it, but a senseless pick by Lamar and then a Mark Andrews fumble drop 2-point conversion at the end of the football game when they're driving down the field late in the game. It could very well be the Ravens easily sit in this position against the Chiefs. Instead, it's the Bills. And I'm not even going to get analytical at this point, man. It's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't care what you have written down in your book or whatnot, but it's the Chiefs, man. That's all I'm saying about this game.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, Lamar with the interception and the fumble on the very next drive, Mark Andrews fumbles and then drops the 2-point conversions, like costly, costly turnovers. And yet this game still came to the down to the very last drive where Lamar Jackson put his team in a position to force overtime. Like I just don't think you'll have that same opportunity against this Chiefs team.
No,
Patrick Mahomes is not going to have those turnovers. They're going to protect the ball, and then I know it's very controversial, all the flags and that Kansas City gets. Like I understand, but like at this point, like it's a real thing. Like Patrick Mahomes tiptoes on the sideline. He's a great job at acting. He's gonna get the flag 9 times out of 10. Like that, that's just something you have to factor into these games. And there's the viral clip of I think Lamar took a pretty bad hit on the sideline. I know Jalen Hurts got hit, looked a little late. Like a bunch of these other quarterbacks, like seems like they're getting hit just the same or even worse than Patrick Mahomes. Yet they're not getting the flags that Mahomes is. So at this point, it's just something you kind of have to take into consideration. And I'm right there with you. I know going into this game, the MVP matchup, and we'll talk about the awards or whatever. But Josh Allen versus Lamar, like in terms of stats, like Lamar had a better game. Like I know he had two bad turnovers, but Lamar was the one throwing the ball down the field. He had the touchdowns. Whereas, as good as Josh Allen is, like he had a very similar game to Jalen Hurts. I sent you the posts and stuff like that. But in terms of total yards, very similar. They both only had one touchdown. I think Josh Allen might have had two rushing, no passing, and then I think Jalen Hurts had that one long touchdown run. So a very similar game, but I mean the key to both of those guys in their game and why they won is, they didn't turn the ball over. Josh Allen, I would say, even had a better game because he didn't take some of the sacks that Jalen Hurts did, but protected the football and was able to, win the time of possession, make sure you don't give the other team free points and you don't beat yourself. So everyone's on Jalen Hurts for his game. I think, there's been some praise for Josh Allen, like, oh, he's super efficient, he's protecting the football, this and that. Like, it's the same thing. Like, these are two winning quarterbacks that understand that, okay, the way this game is going, as long as we don't beat ourselves, we have a chance to win this game. And unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be able to do that against Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs. I think you're going to have to go out and make winning plays. And we've seen Josh Allen go out and make winning plays even against the Chiefs, but left a couple seconds on the clock, a couple too many. But I think it'll be a good game. I think the Bills will be able to do a little bit here. You got to look out the earlier matchup in the season. The Bills able to beat the Chiefs, but ultimately, I think Kansas City pulls away. Like at home, this defense, they got a couple of guys back, and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey just turns back the clock 10 years. He turns into a different football player in the postseason. And I think another key part is those guys on the perimeter, they're starting to come along a bit more. Xavier Worthy, he gets involved
hmm
a lot, a big catch early on down the sideline. Like Patrick Mahomes is actually having, trust in some of those perimeter guys where, the last couple of years it's MBS we're laughing at Kadarius Toney, he can't line up. Like these guys were trashing on, making jokes about. Like and they still won the Super Bowl. And now Patrick Mahomes seems to have, competent receivers, D Hop, he's reliable hands. Like
McCole
these are
Hardman.
guys that can, hmm?
McCole Hardman.
Yeah, McCall Harmon, yeah. Like these are guys that can actually contribute to success on in terms of a passing game for Patrick Mahomes. And then you look at the running game, Kareem Hunt, as Pacheco, he gets another back healthy, like two guys that they're not gonna hit any home runs, but when you need that those tough short yardage situations, they're guys you can rely on. So it's just so funny. The Chiefs go 15 and 2. They only lose one real game to Buffalo. Like everyone's writing them off. No one's talking about the Chiefs. It's the Ravens. It's the Bills in the AFC. Can Joe Burrow and the Bengals sneak in? It'd be so amazing. Like, but at the end of the day, bro, it's just like, yo, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, like this team, they just win games, bro. They're not gonna beat themselves. They limit the mistakes, and it just feels like they're inevitable. Like it's gonna happen. So I'm with you, man. Give me the Chiefs here.
Yeah, I learned 5 years ago. You learned 3 years ago via the Chiefs train. It just takes some people like they just don't realize it till it happens to them. I guess it is can't deny the numbers, man. Next up, man, we got NFL season awards. Let's take it from the top, man. MVP. I'm pretty sure we got the same guy, so I'm just gonna do mine real quick because I give no explanation because I don't like this team. I'm going with LJ, Lamar Jackson here. I don't like the other option either, but I truly do think Lamar, third MVP in the NFL. Um, some Ravens fans right now calling him a regular season merchant, but he's done it. He's balled out, man. He's deserving of his third MVP this season.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And this is one like I know I come on this podcast all the time, or not all the time, but the running joke is Jaden Daniels, that was my bet, man. Like, he's gonna win me some money when he wins Offensive Rookie of the Year. Bro, I called it earlier, like right before, in the middle of the season. I was like, yo, Lamar Jackson. I know Josh Allen's a super heavy favorite right now, but like down the stretch, he's gonna have some big games. There's gonna be televised. He's gonna have the buzz, and it's seemingly that he's gonna end up winning his third MVP, like you mentioned. Could have got some pretty good odds. Didn't bet it. I should have bet it, man. It comes down to the good old saying, "Scare money don't make money." So that's when I like to have back. But yeah, you pretty much covered it. Lamar Jackson, what that Ravens offense was able to do during the regular season, and I know we're doing this. It's like right before the conference championship games, but it's you kind of got to remember these are regular season awards, and you're right. During the regular season, Lamar Jackson, this offense, what they were able to do, um, over 5K total yards, I believe, and 45 total touchdowns. Like, and in terms of passing, like this has been Lamar Jackson's best season in terms of you know completing the ball down the field, hitting all the throws, and you add in the element of Derrick Henry, and it just adds so much other rushing for him as well. So, I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. Close MVP battle between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think they're both pretty deserving, but I'm with you, man. I'd give the nod to LG.
Yeah, I was looking back at my mid-season awards. Regular season, preseason, I took Pat. Mid-season, don't want to talk about it. Talk about a freezing cold take. I took Jared Goff when he was completing 75% of his passes. So, offensive player of the year. Once again, I think I'll let you have the floor for this one. I'm going with your boy Saquon, man, out of Philly, 2K. Not much to say there. I think he's deserving of this award this year.
Yeah, this is I'm not much to say, man. Like you mentioned it, 2,000 rushing yards. Arguably, could have gone for the record if he played that last game. Had less carries than Eric Dickerson too, so he broke the 2,000 yards on a very efficient carry. So 15 total touchdowns, 2,000 rushing yards, and I mean, Eagles have had some success in the past with running backs. You look at guys like DeAndre Swift. You look at guys like Miles Sanders when they went on that Super Bowl run. They had the LeGarrette Blunts, Corey Clements, Super Bowl legend, like Boston Scott. Like these names have all been in the building. they've all had talent, they've all had success behind this offensive line, but I think anybody with eyes can just realize like Saquon's just different back there in that backfield and best best season as a rusher for the Philadelphia Eagles. Like I mean, they had LaShawn McCoy and he had some legendary seasons, but I think Saquon definitely takes the cake, and I'm right there with you, man. Easily offensive player of the year. Shout out Jamar Chase though; he had a crazy season too.
Yeah.
He just got outshined by Saquon Barkley, but I think over 1,700 rushing yards, and he also had the triple crown. So he had a really good season as well. Wasn't for Saquon's legendary year, he probably ended up winning it.
Yeah, man. Next up, defensive player of the year. This one, I mean, you could go a couple different ways if you really wanted to. Um, I'm gonna rock with the only big name out on that Denver Broncos defense. I'm going with Pat. Um, Surtain. Of course, I want to give my boy another DPOY, but I'm gonna keep it non-biased just because of how bad of a year these guys played in terms of Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. But Pat Surtain, a DB cornerback, true lockdown guy. A lot of guys came into the season saying, Sauce could be up in terms of cornerback room. We know how good Pat is. Um, and you really don't see it show up in the box score too much for DBs. He was able to force 4 interceptions this year, coming from this Denver Broncos defense. They stepped up all year long. They got a bunch of guys on defense. I mean, you look at it, Surtain's really the superstar. You got a couple other guys that can play at high levels, but no one truly a superstar on that defense like Pat Surtain, and he leads that defense um, with his skill set. So I think he's deserving of this award. You could go a couple different ways. I wouldn't be mad at it, but I'm going with Pat for DPOY.
Yeah, you mentioned you got to show love to your boy Myles Garrett. I think he's had a dominant season. He's kind of I'm not gonna say entered Aaron Donald territory just yet, but in terms of like who's just the best defensive player and who's the most dominant, I think his name always has to be up there. But I'm right there with you in terms of who I think will win the award. It's probably going to be Patrick Surtain. You mentioned that Denver defense and him. He's a true lockdown corner. I believe he also had a pick six, so you throwing a touchdown with that. Bunch of passes defended. Like he is a true number one lockdown corner. But my pick,
I know who your pick is.
defensive
Go
player of the
ahead.
year. You said you weren't gonna let your Browns bias get involved because
Here
it
comes
was
the
a bad
Philly.
season.
Philly.
Yo, my Eagles biased or not, I gotta for me it's Zach Bond, bro. Like in terms of linebacker play and what he was able to do, like he totally transformed this Eagles defense. And I like you can give a shout out to Jalen Carter and Quinyon Mitchell and DeJean, the two rookies stepped up, but you look at the middle of that defense, I think Zach Bond is the main reason why this Eagles defense, especially down the stretch, was able to be so good and be the number one defense. If you just look at the numbers, 151 total tackles, 11 tackles for loss, an interception, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 4 passes defended. Like he was literally everywhere for this Eagles defense, always made plays in the biggest moments, always around the football. And yeah, I mean, the best player, a true leader on the best defense in football, I think you have to at least be acknowledged, especially considering where he was these past couple seasons on the New Orleans Saints, playing primarily special teams, not getting a lot of burn on defense. He was like, is he an undersized pass rusher? Is he off the ball? He comes over to Philly during free agency on a 1 year prove a deal, gets into that Vic Fangio defense, and becomes an all pro the next season. Like he's had an amazing season. I think you got to give him a shout out or at least some consideration. So you could say Philly bias, but I think Zach Bond has had a deserving season in terms of defensive player of the year.
Yeah. Moving on. Let's go ahead and push it to rookies. I think this one also, this is a clear cut, no brainer. It's your boy JD, man, 25 and 9 passing touchdowns, the picks this year, over 100%, 100 passer rating. It just doesn't get better than that. And it's a rookie quarterback doing it, 3,500 yards in the air. Add the ground game as well, 70 QBR. The list goes on and on. He led this Commanders team, a 4-win team last year, to a postseason berth, and now he's in an NFC Championship game. If you told Commanders fans this last year, and then Bears fans take Caleb Williams, they get Jane Daniels. Um, yeah, it's huge, man. I think there was a saw a clip like Jane Daniels could have been a giant, um, because I believe it was the Jets. Greg Zuerlein made a kick by an inch inside the goalpost. Uh, beat beat someone, whatever it was, but it slid the Giants back, Commanders up. Here they are, Jane Daniels. I think they'll take last season for what they got this season, and all the picks they had to deal with last year and the turnovers and the 50 pass attempt games, but they're in an NFC championship game. Jane Daniels, I think, clear cut, no brainer. Even though Bo Nix did put up a second half run, Jane Daniels has been doing it all year while being banged up at some points too.
Yeah, you pretty much, I mean, covered everything there's to cover there. I'm right there with you. Jaden Daniels, JD5. A question I have for you is similar to what we saw CJ Stroud do last year. Amazing rookie season, put up all the
Yeah,
numbers. Number two pick kind of came out of nowhere. Are you expecting a sophomore slump like we kind of saw from CJ this year? Next year from Jaden, or do you think it's different? He's going to be able to sustain his success and continue to get better.
I think there's going to be some regressions, man. It's the NFL. You got to take it all with a grain of salt. Now, CJ Stroud, sophomore slump, he wasn't performing at the elite top five quarterback level. He was still, showed flashes, still had his time. But defense are going to be expecting Jane Daniels. They're going to game plan. They got the whole year of film in the system in Washington. It's going to be a little bit different. Now, do I think to the same extent CJ Stroud had? Maybe not. I think it's going to be a little bit less to the certain extent that CJ Stroud slumped this year, but I mean, it's the NFL. Growing pains. You're going to be in the second year quarterback, of course, but he stays healthy, he stays on that field. Commanders are in a good position.
Yeah, and that's not like a shot at CJ Stroud. Like he's still a really good quarterback. I think it's had more to do with, injuries in his own line, not really protecting like
Hmm.
his all three of his number one, two, and three receivers missed at least like a substantial amount of time at some point during the season. So receiving room in and out, offensive line didn't really protect him that well. He was under, pressure it seemed like all season. So some valid, not excuses, but some reasons you can see why he took a step back. For me personally, I don't see it with Jaden Daniels, man. It's just like, down the stretch, all he's winning these close game winning drives, like when he needs it the most, when you got to step up in the biggest moments, he's always there. And I think also another thing for him, I think his mobility and his running ability is just something that CJ Stroud just doesn't have. Like he's not the athlete. He can't move like Jaden Daniels. So I definitely think that'll help him a little bit. So if we do see something similar with, maybe the O line isn't as good, I think he'll be able to move around, create a little bit more on his own. So I think that might lead to a little bit more success. So if I had to pick personally, I think we see Jaden Daniels, continue to have some success going on into the next season. But just a quick side note, man. Can we talk about how bad of an offseason that Hard Knocks was for the New York Giants? Like we're sitting here giving Saquon Barkley offensive player of the year, talking about him rushing for 2,000 yards, and then we're giving Jaden Daniels offensive rookie of the year, and like there's two viral clips that have all gone like everyone's seen them all over social media. We've seen the owner and the GM, the owner talking about like I won't get any sleep if they let Saquon go to Philly. And then the other clip where, you have the GM's son sitting there like, oh, who's the best player? Who do you take? And he's like, yo, you got to get Jaden Daniels. He's like, whatever you do, like, you got to find a way to get him. And then we just see the rookie he goes on to have. And then you just mentioned, they had the number two pick, end up winning the game. Like, it's just tough, man. I couldn't imagine being a Giants fan right now with everything going on. Um, Bad, just not a good look. And then having the cameras there and having everyone create the memes and being able to see it, like it's just that worse. It's just that much worse.
Yeah, bro, they're like, bro hasn't slept all year. Like, dude, I
That's
think,
facts, bro.
yeah, obviously, GM's son made a great point. Jane Daniels. I think he was making fun of his sister who was like, "Oh, draft Drake May." I mean, I think they'd be in a solid position
No, I
if
think he
the
said JJ McCarthy. He was like, oh,
ah
they're
yeah
gonna
yeah it
sit
was
him just
JJ it
because
was
he like
JJ
just because they think he looks good or something like
yeah
that.
yeah I still think they'd be
Yeah,
in a better. I mean, they got neighbors. I'd probably take neighbors over JJ, but uh
yeah.
yeah, I think if you even took Drake May, um, but the Patriots were ahead of them in the draft
I
anyways.
mean,
So
hey, even the way Penix looked down the stretch, Bo
Penix
Nix
Knicks,
had some
yeah
success. Like,
yeah
and I'm
he had
bro,
all those
Malik Neighbors is
guys.
not a miss. Like Neighbors has had a really
No,
like an
but
amazing rookie year. He's
you
gonna be
need a
good, but
quarterback. Yeah,
we just know how important in this league. Like, if you want to win,
you
you
need
gotta
a
have QB.
quarterback.
Yeah.
Yeah, which brings me to a question. I've heard Travis Hunter's name getting thrown out for the Browns. If you're the Browns, everyone thinks Cam Ward's the best quarterback in the draft right now. Overlooking my boy Shador, a little Jane Daniels magic, man, knocking on wood. I've been thinking about that for a little too long. But DPOY, man, at least we got the rookies right. We picked the rookies
The
right.
rookies, yep.
I
This
guess
is
it's
your
a
pick.
smaller sample
I gotta
of
give it to you.
players, smaller pool. One with Jared Verse of the LA Rams, man. Taking a look at it, 6 sacks on the year. Um, he had 41 solo tackles, two forced fumbles. Um, he was fifth in the league in terms of edge rushers and tackles, 42nd in sacks, but PFF graded him an 86.2 off that edge. That's ninth among all edge rushers in the NFL. So he was not only able to rush the quarterback, but he also did a great job in the run. He was 11th in the run in terms of edge rushers in the NFL. So getting it done, I mean, you just look at him, he's a long, lengthy player, tall guy off the edge. He's able to make plays. You get him another pass rusher on the other end, he could be a problem another year in the league. I think great season from Jared Verse. There was a lot of good defensive guys that came into the league, but I think the Rams were able to get a steal. I think they had the 10th or the 11th pick, something like that. And they got a good one with Jared Verse at that at their draft position for sure.
Um, I think I'm gonna let my Philly bias take over again, man. No, I'm trolling. I'm trolling. Quail Mitchell,
Quinyon
he had a really
Mitchell.
good, yeah, he had a really good rookie season. But I'm right there with you, man. I think you have to give it to Jared Verse the way he was able to play. You mentioned all the stats and stuff. You can also throw in, I believe he had 77 total pressures, which was I think top five in the league as well. So you know how important it is to, if you don't get the sack, you get the pressure to affect the throw, affect the play, disrupt the pocket. That's almost just as valuable as sacks, maybe even more,
Mhm.
because we've seen some guys have really big, stat years in terms of sacks, but the QB pressures kind of dictate how really good you are, how consistent you can be. So 77 total pressures up there with some of the elites. And you mentioned it, that entire Rams defensive front, especially watching that game against Philly, like they're all super young and they're all going to be playing, for a very long time for this Rams front. And I think they're going to be a problem, down the stretch for years to come. I think they're all rookies or second year players. Like they got some dudes, man. Kobe Turner, Byron Young, like they got some guys on that defensive line. Fisk, the other Florida State rookie at defensive tackle, he's made some plays as well. And then you just add a guy like Jared Verse. I mean, you called it in the beginning of the year. It's looking like he can be that number one dominant pass rusher, and all those guys play off of him. So yeah, man, I think they got a bright future there, and I think Jared Verse is going to be the star over there for the Rams on the defensive side of the ball. So I'm right there with you. I think he's more than deserving of defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, fourth in total pressures in the entire league.
Yeah,
Coach of the year, man. I
I
think we
want I
might.
want to see where you go with this. Who is your coach of the year?
I
I,
think
I
we
think it's going
might
to
be
be
a
the
little
same
different.
player. I know. I think it's going to be the same
Same
one, but
same
I
coach.
yeah, we'll see. Yeah, go. Who do you
I
have?
don't think so. Coach of the
Okay.
year, I'm going with your boy Sean Payton, man, out of Denver. 10-7 record. Bo Nix at quarterback, rookie guy. After the turmoil they had to deal with last year in the Russ ordeal, he was able to make something out of that season. Really worsened their draft pick, just missed the playoffs. The defense I mentioned, you had Pat Surtain, big name, but it's just a bunch of dudes, and he was able to lead this organization and this team change the culture around from what they had last year as Russ in their locker room. He was able to turn it around. And I know Bo Nix is a little bit older of a quarterback as a rookie, but as a rookie quarterback, marching into the postseason, Bo Nix, a guy they drafted like what, 13th, 14th overall, something like that. Bunch of guys taken before him, and you're able to lead this roster to the playoffs. One of the better defenses in the league. And Bo Nix really developed as a quarterback in that second half. You were able to see him as an offensive guru really take over and make something out of Bo Nix's rookie year.
I don't hate it, man. My guy, Sean Payne. Well,
Yeah,
you were right. We don't have the same coach. I
I
think
know
you
we
know
don't.
where I'm going with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, it's got to be Kevin O'Connell. Like what he
hmm
was able to do up there in Minnesota. And I know it was a rough stretch down towards the end of the season, the last two games specifically, but to me, that just makes more of a case for the head coach, Kevin O'Connell. Like Sam Darnold looked this bad in these big moments, yet he was still able to go out, win 14 games, have a chance to, be the number one seed in the NFC up to the last week of the season. Like what he was able to do with Sam Darnold and this offense and that team in general, I just think it's nothing short than amazing. Like we talked about it going into the season, I don't think anyone thought the Vikings would be anywhere near as competitive as they were. I think the total over under coming into the year at Vegas had them like at 5.5 or something like that. Like they weren't supposed to win games at all. The quarterback, they just came off of letting Kirk Cousins go. He tears his Achilles. It's like a big question mark at quarterback. They draft JJ McCarthy. He looks okay. They bring in Sam Darnold. It's like, yeah, they got a couple guys, but we just don't know yet. Like, and you don't want to project something crazy. So you're a little on the safer side. But Kevin O'Connell, what he was able to do, had JJ McCarthy looking really good earlier on in preseason. He goes down with the injury, then it's like, oh, it's definitely not going to work. And they got Sam Darnold. Everyone was making fun of Sam Darnold. Like the last time we saw him in New York, we saw him
That
playing,
was you. That was you that was really making fun of him, but
no, yeah. And like
I know, I
me
know.
and everyone, like no one thought Sam Darnold was going to, and the
No,
Vikings going to have
no,
this
I'm
season.
not
Like
saying
the
that, but
general, no, yeah, I
the
was,
ghost of
bro. I'm not
Sam
going to sit
Darnold.
here and say it. Like, bro, like we saw what he did in New York. We saw his quick
Yeah.
stint with the Panthers. Like he wasn't anything special. And then he was a
Uh,
backup last year for the 49ers. He came in
shut.
against that game for the Ravens, threw the, interception, didn't really look too good. Like we
He
kind
got
of
my
just
boy
thought we
Ayuk
knew,
the ball when he needed it to,
yeah,
though.
we kind of just thought we knew what we saw what we had with Sam Darnold. We knew what he was at this point, but I don't know what Kevin O'Connell did, what he told him, what he was able to figure out with Sam Darnold, but he looked like, the rookie quarterback that everyone projected him to be just about what, 6 years later. So I think a 14 win team make the playoffs with this roster, with what they had to go through on the offensive side of the ball, especially at quarterback. Like I, I know it ended rough, but regular season award, I just don't know how you give it to anyone else other than him at this point.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I just want to be a little bit different than the odd
No,
makers.
I get it. Yeah,
A big KOC, very deserving. Yeah, crazy. Sam Darnold really had the Vikings that close, and yeah, one game away, man. Um,
never betting on Sam Darnold again, bro. Never.
oh, you bet on that divisional round or wild card round?
Yes, bro. Yes, and the
Um,
playoffs
oh, that was the wild card round.
or the wild card round, and I bet on week 17 also
Oh yeah,
or
you
week
did.
18.
I told you I like the Rams.
Yeah, no, it was the Lions
Uh,
that game.
no, Lions had the bye. Oh, that was.
I'm talking about week 18.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was
Because it
talking
was back to back
postseason.
weeks for Vikings. Yeah, they lost
Yeah.
back to back weeks. Yeah, but yeah, you
Yep.
did say you like the Rams in the wild card round. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, in the Arizona game.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
What was I gonna say? Oh, that's gonna wrap up our season awards unless you got a comeback. I didn't do comeback, but
Comeback player of the year. Not really. Although, can we give it to a player who came back like in the same season? Like, I think it should be Bryce Young, bro. Like what he was able to do, like I know
I'm
he
not sure
played
how
like
the award works, but I don't hate it. I
yeah,
don't
that
hate
is
it.
true. Like, we had a guy die on the field last year and didn't win it after coming back and playing. So I'm not too sure, but if
No,
you're
he
gonna give
won
the
it.
award,
Oh
Demar
no, he
Hamlin, no, he
didn't.
didn't. Your boy Joe
Joe
Flacco won it,
Flacco.
man. Yeah, and he wasn't
Yeah,
even injured, bro. Like
he was on the couch.
yeah, I
But
don't know.
then
Like this is like the weirdest award. I'm not too
it
sure.
is. Was
I'm
it
just gonna
Gino
say,
won it 2 years ago or something?
I think he did. Yeah, the he didn't write back or whatever. Yeah, Gino. So yeah, I'm not too like sure what the like preliminary like what you have to do. I'm just gonna kind of like
Nah,
go off on my own like real quick off the
I'm
top.
rocking
Like
with
yo, give it to
Bryce.
Bryce Young, bro.
Yeah, I'm rocking with it.
He
You know,
came
I've been a
back.
Bryce Young stan.
Shout out Raw Wave,
Carolina.
man.
All right, Bleacher Report. What did Raw Wave say to Bryce Young? Um,
Hey, bro. I will say I know I hit the panic button. I thought it was over this
Now you,
season,
you
but
had your hand right on the panic. I think there you did say it though. I think you
I
did.
did. But overall, like the discourse me and you have had, we've been a lot more positive on Bryce Young than a lot of other people. So I will give us
Yeah,
credit for that. Yeah. And like I
and
didn't say his career is over. I just said like you gotta hit the panic button. And clearly the Panthers hit the panic button too, bro. They benched him. Like clearly like you had to. I didn't say it was over, but yeah, hit the panic button, reset.
what was it?
Um
Teams were offering like third. I think I said if I was the Dolphins' second round pick, I would trade for Bryce Young. But
yeah, listen, man, you were onto something. Would you
I,
still do that trade now?
yeah, I'd get a new head coach first, but um,
Wait, the
and
one they said they're
maybe a new
bringing
wide
back
receiver
and just
one.
signed. Okay. The one who just said he wanted to be traded. Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I want a new one of those.
Well, listen, man. We'll have plenty of time this year to go over the off season and talk about things that are happening and what we think needs to happen. And
I think we
free
should just
agency and the
fast
draft are right
forward
around the corner.
to
Yeah,
pass the
like it's Madden
draft,
Sim.
pass. Yeah.
Sim to next off season.
Yeah, don't even go to the draft. Don't even I want to see preseason like week 4. See my roster then. Um
Make the adjustments there.
yeah, exactly. Just before the season, injuries off, obviously, but
Injuries.
bring back Nick Chubb, no regression. It's gonna wrap up our awards, man. Quick, I mean, I guess quickly you want to talk about the NCAA championship game and what I guess Ohio State, man, just coming back from that ugly Michigan loss. I kind of sat here betting against them early on in these playoffs, saying Will Howard wasn't the guy. Ryan Day isn't a coach that can outcoach someone. Um, and I guess it happened last night. I mean, he was out coaching, and obviously the talent on that Ohio State team, in terms of their NIL money, whatever you want to say, it paid off. They were able to get Kyle McCord out of there and Will Howard in there, and I basically thought it was a regression in terms of the regular season, and Will Howard he just stepped up and being a true leader in the postseason leading this Ohio State team and just Jeremiah Smith being the best player on that field 24/7 obviously helps out. So hats off to Ohio State after losing their yearly Michigan game, bouncing back to win a title this time.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State held on. They ended up covering there at the end with the backdoor field goal, but it
Needed
got
that.
close there for a second. And
Hmm.
you mentioned it. I think the coaching played a big part, and I think Ryan Day and this Ohio State Buckeye team just clearly it just seemed like they were ready for the big moments. Whereas Marcus Freeman, he's a great coach, great recruiter. Notre Dame made it to the national championship game. I'm not taking nothing away from them, but to me, there was just like some questionable, like I don't know what they were doing. Like in the third quarter, you're trying to come back. You're down three possessions. Like I don't know why they're not like going with any pace. They were just like coming up to the line, looking at the sideline, changing the play, and like snapping the ball with like less than 10 seconds left on the play clock. Like I think if you're in that position and you're really trying to come back, you need every single second. You have to make everything count. So I would have liked to see them use maybe a little bit more tempo. They were clearly having success throwing the ball down the field. It was either going to be a catch or a flag, like every single time. Like so, I don't really know why they had to kind of come up to the line, change the play, see what's going on, and then hike it. Maybe if they use a little bit more tempo. they would have had more time because it kind of felt like they were going to come back and win. They just kind of ran out of time there at the end. So maybe a little bit more better game management, and then you would like to see them get their two really good running backs involved more. They mentioned I believe his name is Jeremiah Love. They said he was banged up, feeling a lot better. Those running backs, they didn't have that many carries. They're pretty much a non-factor in that game. And Notre Dame, you know, they are tough running football, but maybe you want to see them get involved more. So little head scratcher there, game plan wise. Whereas you look at the Ohio State side of it, like they played all the big hits. You had the big Jeremiah Smith play for the touchdown early on, and then the game winner at the end. Will Howard using his legs, all the receivers getting involved in the two-headed backfield, the running backs, they were able to find success as well. So Ohio State kind of played all their great hits, whereas Notre Dame didn't really use the run game, and I thought time management and urgency could have been a little bit better down the stretch where you're down three possessions, every single second counts. So it was a great game, not taking nothing away from Notre Dame. They put up a fight. They almost came back. Like I said, it just seemed like they ran out of time there at the end. So a really good game, but yeah, ultimately I do think the better team won it with Ohio State.
Yeah, man, no doubt. You got any more comments, takes, anything you want to get off this episode?
That's pretty much it, man. Gotta start watching some NBA, man. That's football is about to be done, dog. College football play championship over 2 more weeks. NFL, like NBA is right around the corner, so we'll kind of switch gears and get into that.
No doubt, man. Go to go episode 122. Go to go pod on TikTok. We're back on TikTok, man. Back like we never left. But until next week, we'll be back with another episode, man. Peace.